afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're joining from. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to the Pakistan Clinical Research Landscape series of APPNA Merit. And my name is Dr. Sarfraz Hasni, and I'm a clinical research rheumatologist at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. And it's my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome the two speakers today, the two presenters today. I will go with the first one and introduce him, and it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Waqar Hafeez, who is a Diplomate of American Board in Psychiatry and Neurology, and is a currently consultant neurologist and director of the clinical investigation at the Maroof International Hospital. He graduated from Shifa College of Medicine and then moved on to United States to get trained initially in neurology in Detroit, Michigan. And after that, he had further training in fellowship in epilepsy. After that, he returned back to Pakistan and was at Maroof International Hospital since then. He has been a practicing neurologist there. He's also a co-director of the Clinical Investigation Center, and he also involved in practicing telestroke. So with that introduction, again, it's my pleasure and honor to introduce with Dr. Waqar Hafeez. So Dr. Hafeez, please take it away. Thank you so much for your time. Please.
Thank you very much for that generous introduction. It's a great opportunity to be part of this series by APPNA, and brings forth part of the whole picture that is probably missing in Pakistan. A lot of work is being done, and a lot of work needs to be done, actually. So with that, I'll start. Before I begin, making this presentation, I was thinking, how can I explain the whole picture or the Maroof's experience in one slide? So, I sat down and I thought about it, and one thing that I could think of was something that I learned in high school, and that's called elastic collision. And let me just explain briefly what is elastic collision. Is when one object strikes another object of a similar mass, it transfers all of its momentum into the next object. And so the first object stays at the same place, and the next object, moves on with the similar velocity or, momentum. Having said that, it's like you can think of it as a billiard ball or the snooker ball hitting each other. So before I start, I would like to acknowledge our mentor, Dr. Qadri, who is the ex-chair of the research department, medical director, Dr. Mir Wahid, and our CEO of the hospital, Harun Nasir, and then to our research coordinator, Mufassir Saab. So, story in a nutshell, elastic collision. And so, like I said, elastic collision, one ball strikes another and the other ball moves on, taking all of its momentum. And in our case, the elastic collision was between individuals coming from different, places and different background experiences, some with like 20 plus years of experience, some with like 5-10 plus, years of experience, and all coming together to form a team. And that team became a big ball, which then basically rolled on. So these are the different doctors who came together and formed a team of new clinician scientists or clinician researchers. And then these new team of clinician scientists started to make an impact on this part of the world called Pakistan. And so now you see that I've not included only Pakistan's map, but I've included the whole globe, and this actually has a meaning, which I'll explain later. So a little bit of background about the hospital where we work. It's a community-based private hospital. It's a small hospital just with 90 beds. And before us forming a team, it had very little experience with research, essentially with individuals doing their own observational studies, and not like institute-based research. And so the research pouring out from that institute was individual and very sparingly. And then gradually over years, the various forms of physicians started to join from various fields. And we already had internal medicine, pulmonology joined here, and then critical care. Finally, a lot of subspecialty physicians started to join, and then essentially the hospital was had physicians from all backgrounds. And before that, it wasn't the case. We had limited number of physicians from different backgrounds. Finally, we had revamp of the ER, ICU was made, and CCU was revamped, a new CCU was made, a dialysis center was established, labor delivery was already there, cardiac cath was already there. In fact, now we have a new cardiac cath. And so bottom line is, over the last couple of years, in the last 3 to 4 years, a lot of changes had taken place, and the environment was ready for the clinical trials. And so early 2020 came, and then the COVID pandemic. And as with everyone's experience, all of our clinics became online. So our clinics were closed. We only had IPD patients getting admitted to the hospital, but outpatient department was totally closed. Everything was online. So telemedicine took place. And then with that, we know that a barrage of clinical trials started in all over the world, including Pakistan, and the online webinars and meetings. And so having this opportunity, we sat in our homes. We were not seeing much patients. Even online patients were not as much as, of course, in the OPDs. That gave us, time to sit back and think about it, what we can do, and this is where it all started. Thinking with our free time, how to make best of this time. So it all started with the brainchild of Dr. Qadri and Dr. Mubin. These are our Dr. Qadri was our ex-chair, and is also overseeing the research department, and Dr. Mubin is also was also part of it. And so they sat together, they formed a team, they called me, they called some other doctors, they were in the hospital, Dr. Shumail, Dr. Asfa, and then the idea was shared. And so after this, we liked the idea, and we agreed to it. Finally, we started to have online teaching sessions. And so these teaching sessions were solely Zoom based. We started with one session, it worked well. We gave each other our feedbacks, and then finally, started to have periodic sessions every couple of weeks to every couple of months. And then we would change the schedules, sometimes once a week, twice a week sessions, sometimes a marathon of 10-day sessions. We tested different models, if you will. And then more team members started to join when they knew that this was something going on, because essentially nobody else was doing this at that time. And so collectively, over the period of, I would say, 1 to 1.5 years, we trained more than 800, in fact, more than 1,000 doctors, nurses, paramedics, and students, and we continue to do so. And the last time we did this was probably a couple of months, 5-6 months back, probably. So this used to be the flyer. You can see new course announcement, and then there was a registration and so forth. And then over the next couple of months, the course, the flyer used to change, or we used to, we started to adapt to new changes. So for example, if you see that beginning, you can see this box here mentioning that there's a course starting in September, and then there's in December, and then there's a March, and then June. So we already had, planned these sessions like months in advance. And then this is how the course outline would look like. We'll start with basics and ethics of clinical research, followed by study designs, more like IPPCR kind of pattern. And then in this course, which could last 10 days, 10 sessions to 15 sessions sometimes, we would cover every part of the basic principles of of research. And so with the online session, gradually the waves of COVID came and went. And so when the COVID waves would, like calm down a little bit, then we started the in-person sessions. Dr. Qadri went to Rahman Medical Institute in Peshawar, as well as in Indus Hospital. He was invited there. And so he delivered online, in-person sessions of these capacity building IPPCR style, lectures. And so it was at that time that, a couple of more team members joined us. Mufassir, who was a coordinator, and Dr. Ahmed Fahim, sorry for the mistake in his name, it's Fahim. And then Dr. Maham joined. Finally, we had a wholesome team that was ready to basically move forward from capacity building. So word was also spread. So finally, finally we were invited by Comstech to deliver online training to not just Pakistan, but to the whole Islamic world. So from the Comstech platform, we did online sessions and in-person sessions. A lot of people joined us in the in-person session at Comstech Islamabad, and it was also aired live, in which 500 plus in participants joined from all over the world, including Middle East, including Africa and Southeast Asia. And so this just in a matter of 1 year, starting from just hospital-based sessions in which only our colleagues were involved inside the hospital, to spreading the word to the whole Pakistan, and then within 1 year to essentially the whole world, where a lot of people joined. And then Maroof Hospital was then known to be doing this wonderful work. And so this was when we were at Comstech. This is Dr. Qadri, Mustafa Qadri. And this is Dr. Maham, this is Dr. Mubin Iqbal. Everyone had their own teaching sessions, if you will. This is myself, and this is our team. And so a couple of parties, team members are not here. This is Dr. Shmail, this is Dr. Ahmad, and this is myself, Dr. Ammad, Dr. Maham, Dr. Qadri, and Mufassir Saab. And this is how our flyer looked like with Comstech, with the lead facilitators on this side, and course contributors, and learning objectives, topics, and duration and timings, and so forth. So, COVID was in one way blessing in disguise for us, in the sense that it made us realize that we are able to do things that we couldn't have thought about without the COVID. Online teaching sessions, which was a thing which was not very famous, and now everyone knows it. So the step two was, now we had the capacity, we had the people, we had the team. The step two was to setting up an actual on-site department. And the hard part was to convince a private setup, a setup that is just a community-based and not a government-based, and that has nothing to do with research, to convince that setup about our passion and their trust in us, and then finally helping us, forming that clinical research center. And then the next step was hiring and infrastructure, and getting the site ready for evaluation. So evaluation by who? Evaluation by DRAP. So what we did was, we had this clinical investigation center. On the left, you can see this. And then this is our mission statement. Outside, there's a standee. And then there's a place where the patients can sit, wait for their turn. This one is the consent room, and then this one is the storage and administration room. This is a waiting room. And these are the different, research office, assessment room, and then so forth, examination room. So we had our research department set up quite quickly within a matter of months after we were done with these like 6 or 7 sessions. And so the things started rolling. And then the approval by DRAP. So after this was built, we invited a DRAP for approval of Maroof as a clinical trial site, and then they finally approved. We had the IRB was formed, and then the next step was collaboration with the rest of the world or rest of the nation, and then starting a clinical trial. So all of this happened over a period of 2 years or less, which is extremely remarkable for a private setup to do such a thing with no background in research whatsoever. And basically the stimulus was the motivation was our background of immense background of Dr. Qadri helping us achieve this, and Dr. Mubin as well, among others. Motivation is ilm nafia, the beneficial knowledge that everybody benefits from. To be honest, we did all of these. Most of us did this for free. Actually, I think everyone did it for free. Our team did it for free for 1,000 plus doctors, and which was a great thing to do. So it's basically ilm nafia, and the passion to transfer knowledge to the next generation, and essentially transferring momentum. The same slide that I showed you, the first slide. And of course, reviving the legacy of Razi, Ibn Sina, and Al-Hasan, our great ancestors who initially, brought on the concept of controlled trials and, things like that, which is long forgotten now. And so we also showed continued plasticity in this trend, because every time we came up with a new session, we would change it a little bit. And so when we were trying to build a clinical trial site, we thought about why not doing a session on, a teaching session on randomized controlled trials rather than research in general. So we tailored our presentations to randomized controlled trials. And so we talked about, you can see, equipoise and ethics in conduct of RCTs, formulating research questions for RCTs, eligibility, inclusion, exclusion criteria, and so forth. So all of those topics which we use for general research, we try to implement the same thing for randomized controlled trials, and that worked well actually. And so challenges, again, the same thing, building a research department from scratch and starting a clinical trial within 2 years, great achievement in itself. And a lot of physicians want to do research, but don't know where to start. And so the role of continued training session and continued capacity building will remain in the foreseeable future, because this is a continuous thing. It's like a continuous medical education for research. And so with that, my last words are, we must collide for good and collide for Pakistan to get the ball rolling. Over to Dr. Ahmad.
Thank you so much, Waqar. This was very informative and very impressive that in a very short time period, how from almost zero, you were able to do, you and the other team members were able to do capacity building. With that, thank you. Now, with that, it's my honor to introduce our second speaker for the session is Dr. Ahmed Fahim, and he is a very long bio. I'll try to present it as succinctly as possible. So Dr. Ahmed Fahim is a clinician scientist with clinical research, academic, and administrative experience for more than 14 years. And he is, of course, currently at Maroof, but he's the director of research there. He is done his MBBS from University of Karachi, and after that he was at Al Khan University, and then he was involved in multiple projects, both nationally and internationally, where international collaboration from Rockefeller Center and IDRC in Canada. And then subsequent to that, he joined NUST, the Center for Virology and Immunology, and completed his MPhil from there. And during his studies, he was again served as a project manager for multiple internationally funded projects. Then after that, he was a senior CRA and associate director for clinical research. Then during this work, he was at Shifa and was involved in multiple pharmaceutical and academic-based clinical trials. Since then, he has also achieved, he also have a PhD, and he has done multiple clinical trials and has been served in academic positions. In addition to that, he has also done training in clinical research from both US as well as from Canada. So currently he's the director of Maroof International. Like I said, he has a very long bio and mashallah, a lot of achievements. Without further ado, I will hand it over to Dr. Ahmed Fahim to share his experience. Thank you so much, Ahmed, for joining, and please take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Hasni, and thank you, Dr. Waqar, for giving me the over. Thank you, Dr. Hasni, for giving my intro. Actually, I'm honored. Okay, my slides will be on basically two parts. I'll be just briefly brushing some statistics from Pakistan, and I'll also be just brushing some, you can say, some stats of what we are doing. The capacity building part has been covered by Dr. Waqar, so I'll be telling about how many trials we are working on. Okay, next slide. Okay, in clinicaltrials.gov, where we usually register lots of our clinical studies, you can see that it's you can have a view of there are Pakistan lies in the midway and the 9 OIC member countries, where we have typically 960 international studies, which includes phase 1 international studies, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. So I was just, when I was, this slide was initially, actually, I take it from Dr. Qadri's presentation, which he has given earlier in the Pakistan Society of Nephrology conference, actually. But this gives a very, very smart snapshot of where we actually stand. It's not like that we are not doing any clinical research, we are doing, but our numbers are not much, and they are not, I believe, actually utilizing our whole potential. And registering in the clinicaltrials.gov does not necessarily mean that those trials are actually being published or being actually we cannot guarantee the meaningful outcomes. So we have to move more, we have to do more studies, and we have to be more compliant in registering all the studies there. This will give a more better view. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I also encountered another paper which is recently published in 2022 by Amna Sadiqa in the Journal of Habib Medical College, Ahmad. And what she did was she has actually computed studies from September 1992 to February 2019, and she has actually taken only the clinical trials which have been actually being completed. So you can see that the numbers here are not much, but we can just I am just presenting here the specialties in which clinical trials have been done, and as you can anticipate that the internal medicine area is where most of the clinical trials have been done, followed by surgery and obs and gynae and pediatrics and dentistry. So this just give an overview of what we were doing in the pre-COVID era. Afterwards, next slide, please. Okay, DRAP started computing in the form of a clinical registry of all the clinical trials from July 2019 till January 2022, and you can anticipate that 19, but very few clinical studies, and appreciate that somehow has actually kick-started all the clinical research activity here, and it continued in 2021. However, in 2022, we have just one slide, which has this is one study which has been actually been on the way. That doesn't mean that clinical research activities are not going. However, in Pakistan, what happens is for a clinical research trial to be active on the ground, it has to go through National Bioethics Committee approval and then the Clinical Steering Committee of draft approval. And there was a few months of lapse where we technically do not have a Clinical Steering Committee, and that created a lapse of clinical research studies approvals. And therefore, you can appreciate that in 2022, we had a relatively backlog of lots of studies, lots of CROs, and lots of multiple international players are actually pushing that the CSC committee should be on the should be instated. 2-3 days back, I've heard that the CSC committee, Clinical Steering Committee, has been formally formed, and I hope that the backlog which the absence of CSC committee has created, I hope that will be covered. Okay, next slide. Okay, this slide just is presenting some few numbers. We have around pharmaceutical sales of about $3.1 billion US of systemic anti-infectives and of GI and metabolic disorders, and they're just presenting a part of our sales, pharmaceutical sales. Among that sale, about 95% of the active APIs they are being imported from abroad, and Pakistan has about 647 active operating drug manufacturing licenses. Actually, when I was come across this figure, actually, I took it as a surprise because there are a lot more pharmaceutical companies I was anticipating, considering that the research work which we are conducting now, you'll see that with presence of so much pharmaceutical companies, our research activity is quite meager. And we can also anticipate, and you can also see that most of the manufacturing licenses in Pakistan, none of has been FDA approved, and only one pharmaceutical company actually has a GMP certification by the European Medicine Agency and approval by the UK Medicine and Health Products Regulatory Agency of UK. So from that aspect, we have to work a lot. Next slide. Okay, so formally we have on papers, reportedly we have about 18 CROs in the Pakistan till date. You can see I have just divided them into Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad based CROs. Most of the CROs here are working across cities. I believe not all of them, because I wasn't able to verify how many of them are actually approved by draft. But among some of them, we are actually working with them, so we can appreciate that most of the CROs are draft approved, and probably some of them might be in the phase of getting draft approval. 18 CROs are there, so I believe that I can foresee that probably in coming months and years, our clinical research activity might be bigger than what we have been witnessing from last few years. Okay, next slide. Okay, so as Dr. Waqar has briefed us, we started our clinical research journey. Maroof is a small hospital, and it's a typical private hospital. However, they took the challenge of entering into the clinical research arena, and our site was granted draft approval in February 2021. As a trial site, we initially thought of that we can give ourselves a challenge of starting clinical trial activity in a city. Although Islamabad is not a big city as like Lahore or Karachi, however, we thought that if we can done quality clinical trials, we can produce some sort of reputation in this particular area. Okay, next slide. So this is our team. Me and Dr. Waqar are leading the team. For Dr. Maham is our senior clinical CRA. Dr. Hassan is our CRA, and followed by Dr. and Professor Shah, who is a research coordinator. Next slide. Okay, our team more interestingly, although Maroof doesn't has prior clinical research experience, but our team members, I, Maham, we have, and Dr. Hassan, we have prior clinical trial experience, and we thought of why shouldn't we bring in all those experiences. So during the scope of last 15 months, we have attracted some drug trials related to infectious disease, drugs, vaccines. In the area of oncology, we have attracted a trial. Then we have a trial in the feasibility phase from neurological diseases. Then we have an initial supplement trial around the corner. We have trials from autoimmune diseases, surgery, hematological disorders, complication in critical care. And we are currently working with IQVIA, Pharma, key trials of master industry candidate and Ammad. I'm not actually showing you the details of those trials because there is a confidentiality disclosure agreement, and that bounds us. At the moment, we do not have signed CTAs of all those trials. However, we have completed all those trial terms. We have one active trial from McMaster University, Canada. That's a revised trial on proton pump inhibitors prophylaxis, and that is running very smoothly. And we have just 12 trials in the pipeline. What I want to show you here is that just in a span of 15 months, even with the challenge of COVID, and even with the research capacity building which we've done outside and inside, with the inside one, the research capacity building which we invested on our people, it has given us back. It has given us the fruits that we have garnered some trials from most of the companies which we are, and we are also working with institutional trials, not just only the commercial trials. So in that sense, Maroof is a sort of a unique example, I believe, and I just want to set this example that in Pakistan, if other clinical research center, if other private hospitals and other enterprises wants to do clinical research, they definitely can, provided that they have a good clinical research team, and that's a very good opportunity to work on. Okay, next slide. Okay. Conventionally, we have a spectrum of T0 to T4 translational research. During my previous work, where I have worked at Khan, at Shifa, and at NAMS, I have witnessed that in Pakistan, there has been lots of basic science research going on at the T0 level. And at that T0 level, lots of research work is going on. People are working on drug interactions, and they're also working on cell line toxicity analysis, and they're also trying to find MTT assays and drug analysis on cell lines. Lots of people are doing it. But I've also found that there is a big gap. That work is not being translated, is translated well, or not being forwarded to the T1 or T2 research. And that's where I believe that our pharmaceutical industry has to step in. As I've shown the figures below, my intent showing that particular slide was that even with a few multinational companies and lots of national pharmaceutical companies, we should consider considering those people a chance who are actually doing basic science research. We do not have much T1 and T2 translational activity. However, we have lots of opportunities coming along now after COVID in phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials. In fact, when a CRO comes for our phase 2 trials, we actually look towards first our own preparedness regarding conducting phase 2 trials, because I believe that to conduct a phase 2 trial, we really have to train our pharmacists well with reference to drug efficacy analysis and all those things. Okay, and during the COVID, I believe that because of this drop in sales and all those things, the phase 4 activity has been reduced. However, now I'm sensing, because few few pharmaceutical companies have contacted us for actually doing phase 4 clinical trials also. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what challenges which we face, and I'm suggesting these challenges because that will give you a snapshot of how we can. These are the challenges which we have to cover. And okay, so I believe the biggest challenge which we face doing clinical research is data management issues. In Pakistan, what I found while working at various institutes is that apart from Khan and Indus and a few other centers and Shifa, where there is a proper health management information system, we usually conventionally do not actually have a proper health management information system. And for doing clinical trials, it's very necessary that you should have a very good clinical information system, because every trial requires a source document verification. And here what we are encountering is that we do not actually note down every patient details on a file. And even I think in public hospitals, things are not very on a really well note, because and remember, most of the multinational pharma companies are actually well aware of it, because since they already have a penetration from the aspect of their pharma representatives which they routinely visit, and they know that we do not have a proper good data management system. That deficiency actually creates a mistrust among international stakeholders, and a hesitancy whether we actually can produce really good data. And for clinical trials, the data has to be right, has to be well noted, it should be verifiable. So I believe the data management issues is the biggest challenge our centers has to look on. Then, as I said, that data management issues actually is directly linked to the trust for investment in clinical research. I have witnessed and have spoken to lots of people from industry, and probably most of them are still in the phase of hesitancy, because they believe that they're not sure that whether their investment will actually turn into something big. I personally believe that we have to provide some mechanism, we have to provide some models, we have to provide some working models, so that we can say that yes, we can provide a meaningful data, clean data, with good good research practices, so that every time they come and want to do clinical research, it is covered by good clinical research practices. There is another area where I believe that we want to have further work on, and that's patient education and awareness regarding clinical trials. But I personally believe that if the first two things are addressed, probably we can address this area partially. We can address that. Most of the patients I've encountered during clinical trials, probably most of them most of them actually are. I can divide those patients into two parts. When I take a consent, I've encountered that some subjects believe that whether they are skeptical, and we have to take the consent really well. But for taking consent really well, you have to actually tell them about what you're actually doing. And I've realized that sometimes subjects give their consent without actually understanding what they're giving, what they're up to. They just feel, okay, we have to come and and our test will be done. Okay, this will be free, and okay, and we'll get the drug free. Okay, that's fine. And I believe there are 20 elements of informed consent, as been taught by our mentor, Dr. Mustafa Qadri. I believe that 20 elements of informed consent has to be clearly imparted in taking consent. And the subject has to clearly know what are that subject's rights, how many times he can voluntarily withdraw. And then there is another area where I believe that we are also struggling, is ignorance in identifying relevant partners which are open for new trial site for enrollment. And then the last one, which we are trying to mend, and that's train resource personnel of investigators and research staff in conducting unintended protocol, because all the clinical trial, actually conductors of clinical trial require very strict trial protocol compliance. And that's how our image is actually looked upon by all the international players of clinical trials. Next slide. Okay, so I during my clinical research work during my career, I encountered that internationally people have actually made alliances in clinical trials. There are multiple centers who have actually grouped together, and a multinational or a CRO or a pharmaceutical company, when approach them for clinical trials, these alliances actually help them in patient development. I do not find any alliance in our country, and I believe if we can make an alliance, we can partly help some of our challenges. Partly. With that perspective, our hospital, Maroof International Hospital, has signed an MOU with Indus Hospital Network, and that MOU is actually targeting that if we come across a clinical trial which we are doing, and we feel that trial can be also done at Indus Health Network, will give a referral to that sponsor or that CRO, and they can move on to, and they can approach them as well. And we also expect the same from Indus Health Network as well. So this is just starting off making alliances, because I feel that if we work together, we can mend the challenge of patient enrollment according to the deadlines as set by all the CROs and all those sponsors, which is actually very big concern for all the CROs and sponsors. Next slide. Okay, so as I said before, this slide contains, apart from Getz and Ferosens, which are national pharmaceutical companies, these are the pharmaceutical companies who have been performed really well with reference to their sales in 2001-2022. These are the top 10 pharmaceutical companies in Pakistan that have performed well. Apart from Getz and Ferosens, you can appreciate that these are the companies who are actually running the bulk of the clinical trials in the world, yet they are not doing clinical trials in here. So that's something which tricks me, that what's deficient in ourselves, that they are not looking towards us for doing clinical trials, while they are doing clinical trials, big clinical trials across the border. All of these companies are doing really good trials across various specialties across the border. In India, they're all doing it. However, if you search, hardly we have any clinical trial from all these companies. So I want to encourage them. Yet I also want to look onto how can we build our profile, how can we improve our practices, so that we can really attract them, we can really push them to invest on us and in clinical research area. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what needs to be done? This is something which I request from our international diaspora, and it's like we want international collaboration and active engagements with the relevant investigators and researchers, as we do. As this is something which we believe that we do not have enough forums where we can identify. I believe in US, in UK, in Canada, probably these are the big countries. The whole Europe, they're all doing clinical trials, and we usually read those clinical trials when they're published. Actually, I want, what our team wants, what Maroof wants, is that we should be engaging those collaborators, those sponsors, when they are looking for initiating clinical trials. Probably at that point in time, if we can contact them, probably we can be of mutual benefit. Exploration of conducting clinical trial in herbal medicine. That's another area, because we have a very big pool of herbal medicines in Pakistan. I found that the China and India, both of these countries have actually invested lots of clinical research investment in this particular area, and that has actually returned them with it has now bearing fruits, and they have and their product is across the whole world. It's there. A few years back, uh, a very famous pharmaceutical, a very famous herbal medicine company, Hershey, they they approached us when I was working at Shifa, and they actually shown really some good interest in working on testing their drugs. They had shown an intention that probably they want to do clinical trials. I don't know that whether they have actually proceeded on working, but they do explore that area. And from that experience, I thought that as a clinical research personnel, and as an organization, as an individual, and as a community, I want to encourage them. I want to encourage all the herbal medical companies in Pakistan that they should look into their products, whether they have gone through the conventional phase of clinical trials, and probably some of those medicines are easily available in Pakistan, but they have not been traveled through all the clinical trial phases, and that's one area which roadblocks that blocks them in exporting that particular product, because internationally people want data. People want that what are the data statistics regarding whether this product is really efficacious or not, and that hinders them. So they're compelled to sell their medicines in Pakistan only. That's something I believe that they should look on. And last but not the least, capacity building. Capacity building is something which we require, because as I said before, now more and more trials are coming into Pakistan. We are really looking forward, and we believe that yes, coming months, inshallah ta'ala, will be something good for us. However, it requires intensive capacity building, not just for new people, but for us as well. Although we are working in clinical research, but we always feel that we need to learn more and more and grow our practices so that we can do a good clinical research. Next. Okay, I want to acknowledge Dr. Mustafa Qadri, my mentor, in sharing some data. I want to acknowledge Dr. Mir Wahid and the senior management of Maroof Hospital in promoting. And I also want to acknowledge my team in helping with some of my statistics which I have used in this slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed, for a very comprehensive review. And I think probably all of us agree that from a very small setup, you were able to build so much in terms of capacity building, and very eloquently highlighted the issues of challenges of clinical research. Especially, you have done the capacity building, but the data management or having an infrastructure is very important, and how we can attract the international players, and at the same time, what we will have indigenously, the herbal medications, how we can take them through clinical trial and international. So again, appreciate both of you for your very kind presentation, and also for very eloquently covering the landscape of clinical research with specific attention to your personal experience. So with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Umar and Dr. Uzair to please provide your comments. And if there are any questions in the chat, Dr. Uzair, you can please entertain those.
Thank you, Dr. Sarfraz Hasni and Dr. Waqar and Dr. Ammad. I think this is an extremely passionate story. I mean that the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little extra that you can make it happen if you desire to do so. A private hospital, and with 90 bed capacity and with a clear vision, you made it. So I think that's fantastic. So let me reiterate, the primary objective of APPNA Merit is to focus on the research taking place in Pakistan and showcase it to all the global players who are interested. So before moving any further, let me share with you recently that one of the leading CRO, led by the group of professors from McMaster University, So they have planned to visit Pakistan in November. So I put in their agenda to visit the Maroof International Hospital. So just touching some of your point, of course, the Pakistan industry has crossed 600 billion Pakistani rupees pharmaceutical, and the top three companies, they have touched like 35 billion Pakistani rupees revenue every year. And we have like the Herbion, which is a leading nutraceutical company, is a success story. And Canada probably be a destination for the gold standard nutraceutical. You need to have some clinical validation, which is a little different from the US. Umar will share his experience from the US. So these are heart-touching stories. And let me assure you of the full support from APPNA, Merit, and all the clinician, all the consultants. So all of them, they will take it to the next level. And you have touched that, what we call it, the tipping point where you are going to fly. And just to share with you, recently, I was just reading an update yesterday, 53% of clinical trial now have shifted to Asia Pacific region, which was unthinkable back in 2020. So this is going to multiply like with the factor of X. And why not Pakistan? Pakistan should have its due share from the clinical research. And I do see huge growth. Just to clarify one point to many of the participants, that they asked this question, that why the 2022 was quite quiet. So that's not because of the market factor. It was because of the regulatory activity, as mentioned by Dr. Ammad. Since December last year, it was non-functional. And we have approached a lot of people over there, to the Secretary Health, to the Principal Secretary, to the Prime Minister, and to all those who matter in this decision making. So I sent them, and on behalf of APPNA, we approached them to make it happen as early as possible. But there was a big gap. And now I think what we are struggling, that they should make a policy that unless and until the new committee is formulated, the existing one should continue during the interim period. So there should be no gap. So it was a big blow really for the last over 6 months that was happening. So that is just to clarify why the graphs are not there, because there is a pile up of all the activities. So it's very heartening that there are, like, directly or indirectly 13 or 18 CRO present in Pakistan. So that's a good thing. So these are some of the points which you highlighted, and we are extremely thankful to you because you prepared this presentation on a very short notice, and it's a wonderful presentation. It's a great insight, and I have yet to see such a comprehensive presentation considering each and every aspect. And now, it's going to expand to OIC countries, Comstack, because I remain as a focal person with Comstack way back in like late 90s. So I can understand their potential. So that's phenomenal. So with this, over to Umar and then to Professor Sarwat. So Dr. Umar, would you like to say something, please?
Oh, sure. Today, actually, I would like probably the most of the time, if you want, if you allow me. So I would like to raise one question. What are the key drivers for the international companies to conduct the trial? Enrollment, absolutely. Cost, not at all. I mean, some of us may be thinking of that. And the other point I would like to make, recently, for the last 4 years, I will say Australia has been the destination for clinical trials. And if you ask me, if you have been to any clinical conference, what they are trying to sell, the Australians? Two things, literally two things. They don't have much population. They don't have the prevalence of the disease to that level. There are only two things they sell. One is the approval by their regulatory body. You can get the approval in 4 weeks. You don't need to even submit the proper IND. You can go just with the investigational brochure and that would be it. So that's the one thing. The other is, of course, the tax breaks. So those are the two things which really attract the trials. So I think we need to, Dr. Zaid, as you mentioned, they work with the draft to streamline the approval process. So this way, the international company should not feel the hurdle. What is the hesitation to go for the clinical trial? The hesitation is the data. we have touched so many points. The prevalence of disease in Pakistan, I think, unparalleled to any other country. Okay, highly qualified doctors, we have it. The clinical centers, like the hospitals like Shifa Hospital or Maroof or Aga, we have it. Now I think you have added even one more point. Capacity building, trained people, we have it. So all key components which really need to run a trial, we have it. So our next thing is really to win the confidence of the international companies. And to win the international confidence, I can tell you, I work with a lot of Chinese companies. One way to win the international confidence is to really go overboard. Be it on every component, whether it's the compliance, whether it's a recording of the data, whether it's the integrity of the data, you really go overboard. For example, I have been working with WuXi. WuXi is one of the top class pharmaceutical companies, started probably in the last 10 years. You work with them, they give you more than you will ask for it. And that's the way we're gonna break this the status quo. We
Absolutely, I agree.
And by the way, I have been involved with so many companies, and we will be bringing the clinical trials to Pakistan, not just for the repurposing drugs, but for the innovative drugs. That's the one thing. To win the confidence, we really need to go overboard. I really like the consortium concept. I'm thinking of, we are going to the CPHI in November. I have been encouraging to the Pakistani pharmaceutical industry, do not put the booth or send your visitors here and there who are just having the coffees and like walking around. Put the 3 booths of 3 Pakistani companies next to each other so that you can show the presence. Pakistan is the place for the clinical trials, and clinical trials is not a small industry. I'm amazed that our country is being sold for $1 billion because we are getting from the IMF. Conduct 5 trials, you will have the $1 billion. Literally conduct 5 trials, you will have the $1 billion. And I would like to, Dr. Uzair has been working with the government and policymakers. We need to convince them they don't need to back to the IMF. Streamline your procedures. We will have the business in Pakistan. Pharmaceutical industry is $1 trillion industry, and we should take the share of it. So the consortium, absolutely. And I will suggest the same thing for the clinical trial. The clinical research, you guys are doing wonderful. So for me, the outcome, and my apologies if I'm taking a little longer time because this is very close to my heart. So for clinical research, my expectations from physicians who are very active in the clinical research is the following. They do the high quality work, and end result should be they become the key opinion leaders for any new chemical entities companies. They become the specialist for that particular indication. So when you do the clinical,
Ahmed, why you have some freezing issues, so can you switch off your video so that we can hear you? In that way, you will be consuming less bandwidth. But in the meanwhile, may I ask?
Back. Your mic is muted.
I'm back. My apologies. Got disconnected. So the other was the herbal medicine. If we continue to do the clinical research, we can prove some of the herbal medicine. And I'm glad some of the companies are approaching you. Because the clinical research will allow you to put on the label the efficacy or the purpose of use. So that's the other point I really, when we talk about the clinical research, it should not be just by putting the papers, but really to get on the board for the as a key opinion leader in the particular therapeutic area. So herbal medicine, I will say I really want to ask this one question to both of you. If you will have to list, I mean, data management is the one thing. The bioanalysis was, in my view, was the another area where we don't have much. I mean, we can do the trial, we have the highly qualified doctors, we will have the patients, the disease is there, enrollment will be there, but generate the data, like bioanalysis, the another area where I think we are very weak. But there are the solutions to that kind of situations, where we can collaborate with another international, highly qualified GCP compliance labs, and we take the sample and ship out there. I mean, can you imagine doing the clinical trial in the Australia from US? It takes 2 days even to bring the sample in the US. So I think those are the areas I just want to touch upon. Wonderful presentation. I will say, Dr. Zahir, your bar of the quality is going up and up. I know you used to say, this is the first time I ever seen the presentation, but now you will have to say every time probably. Very good work. And I'm looking forward to working with you guys. And we are going to bring the trials to Pakistan. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah, just a word about Dr. Umar. Dr. Umar is working as a consultant with a bunch of pharmaceutical companies in Bay Area in US, and he is a frequent traveler to many parts of the world, including Pakistan, and he's at the forefront, really dishing out some of the clinical research to many of the groups. So I think he can play a pivotal role. So Dr. Hasni, just last request to Dr. Sarwat, if he had like to say something, and then I know we are 2 minutes past time, then we are going to close. That's Dr. Sarwat, please.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to say that those people who feel that, that Pakistan cannot do research, this, this presentation is extremely heartening to see that even, and I don't mean even in a derogatory manner, that even non-academic private hospital can take the lead in doing such a wonderful job. And I think the future is great. And I think we should continue with our effort with the APPNA research and all other activities that will support Pakistan. And really, in fact, I think we've learned a lot from today's presentation. A fantastic presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarwat. And again, I would like to thank our presenters who did an excellent job, and our panelists from today. Dr. Uzair, any final words before we end?
I think just to thanks, and just to announcement that the participant, they will get a certificate of participation from the merit committee. That's one thing. And secondly, we are going to continue our journey showcasing some other clinical sites, and we will compile a complete report which we are going to share all those who matter, whether in Pakistan or outside Pakistan and globally. And I'm personally visiting by myself in October, November, and definitely my agenda is to see all of you and get your first-hand information and incorporate and, dish it out to not only in Pakistan, but globally, where the people are really matter in making such a decision. So that's all from my side. So with the permission of Dr. Sarfraz Hasni, Professor Sarwat, Dr. Umar Hayat, Dr. Waqar, Dr. Ahmad. So once again, we are extremely thankful, and we are also extremely thankful to the participant, a lot of people, very busy professionals who spare their time, participated, and the technical team behind organizing these, all the data, the Walid and his team, we are extremely thankful to you. So all the best wishes. And here we have the long weekend here in Canada, but we look forward, you enjoy your weekend, and all the best wishes, and see you soon. And Dr. Sarfraz Hasni is going to be your anchor person with NIH US. He is a very passionate person to coordinate. He's doing a lot of activity, and he's going to Pakistan having a grand round with Aga Khan University. So I will request him to, if possible, he can plan a trip to Islamabad, get in touch with you. So that's the last word. And thank you very much to all of you. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank
you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Thank you.